Welcome to Watches with Dennis, and today we're going to do an analysis video. So expect full nerd mode here. We're going to talk about Rolex, and we're going to talk about, are they just jewelry at this point? And I think we already know instinctively that the answer is no. There are a lot of tool available options, though they have moved up the luxury chain as time has gone by. But I thought, let's actually do a count. Let's figure out exactly how much is sort of tool oriented and how much is more bling, more luxury, more just being pieces of jewelry. And so the way I decided to do this is I went to the Rolex website and I loaded up every single professional watch. And I chose the professional line. That's sort of what they call their sports watches, because there's always been this, I guess, mixed message that comes across in a lot of the classic watches. Are the day dates and the date just, are those sports watches or are those dress watches? And in reality, they straddle the line. I mean, they are often available on bracelet, 100 meters water resistance. They got a lot of specifications that on paper would make them sound very tool watch oriented or sports watch function. But the professional line is a lot clearer because every single one of those watches exists for a purpose. Like they exist for pilots, or they exist for spelunkers, or they exist for people needing to time races. And so I think the professional line is all very clearly designed to be some sort of tool purpose, a sports watch of some format. So I thought that would be a good example to go ahead and go through. Now, I didn't just do references either. I counted every configuration option that I could that I saw on Rolex's website. So if a watch had a change from Oyster Flex to bracelet, but otherwise it was the same case, same bezel, same dial, each one of those counts as one. Each dial color counts as one within each bracelet configuration, each dial, as I mentioned, and say different case materials, different bezel materials. I just want to note that. So looking through, as I did here in mid-April 2024, I came up with 106 configurations available for professional watches. And this is after Watches and Wonders. So like the Yachtmaster 2 is out. Like it's not in there at all. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to list out what these are. And I've broken them into three categories. Base metals. So that's mostly what they call oyster steel. They're stainless steel watches, but it does also include titanium because there are a couple watches now in titanium. So those are generally like through US customs. Those would be considered base metal materials. Then two-tone watches. So those are steel merged with something else. And most of these are steel with some form of gold, though in the Yachtmaster line, there is the option with steel paired with platinum. So all of those fell into the two-tone category. It's the smallest category. And then finally, precious metal watches. So those are any flavor of gold or platinum. Those all end up in the precious metal category. So we're going to run through these. It's going to be a little bit. I'm going to be looking off to the side because I've got spreadsheets here. Don't worry, though. I'm going to overlay on the screen so you can see the overall tally by model line so that you can keep along with me. But go ahead and start in the order that I found them on the website. So the Submariner. And overall, there were 3 base metal Submariners, 2 two-tone Submariners, and 3 precious metal Submariners. Now, where possible, I did break these out further. So with the Submariner, there are 2 variants. There's no date or just the regular sub. And then there's the date Submariner. So in the no date, there's just one watch. It's the one base metal steel watch that's available. So the rest of it's all the date. There are 2 base metal date versions. There are 2 two-tone, and there are 3 precious metal Submariners that are currently available on Rolex's website. Moving next to one of the most popular of the professional line, the GMT Master 2. Didn't really designate any variants here. Spoiler alert, this is going to be the most iterations of a base metal watch that exist. This is the model line with the most of them. So there are 8 base metal GMT Master 2s, there are 2 two-tone, and there are 4 precious metal. So this one leans very much more towards that tool aesthetic. Next on the list is the Daytona. Again, no breakouts on variants, so this is going to be the one with the most options total, and you're going to see just how bad it gets. A lot of this has to do with dial configurations and bezel configurations, because there's a lot you can mix around in terms of sort of building your own Daytona. So base metal, there are 2. Two-tone, there are 4. And precious metal, there are 51. So, and I'll spoiler alert that and say there will be nothing with more than 51 in a particular category for a specific model. Next is the Yachtmaster. I already mentioned that there's no Yachtmaster 2 anymore, so this is just the regular Yachtmaster, but I did break this out into 3 groupings based off of size. So Overall, there's 1 base metal Yachtmaster, 7 two-tone, and 7 precious metal. So in the 37 millimeter flavor, there are no base metal. There are 3 two-tone and there are 2 precious metal. In the 40 millimeter sizing, there are no base metal. There are 4 two-tone and 2 precious metal. And then the 42 millimeter, there's 1 base metal. It's from last year. It's when it came out in titanium. And there are 3 precious metal. There are no two-tones at the 42 millimeter sizing. Next model is the Sea Dweller. This one's also very simple, no breakouts. There are 2 versions available. There's a base metal and there's a two-tone. So this is actually not the only model line in the professional line that doesn't have a precious metal option. But as you can see, there just aren't very many watches that are available as Sea Dwellers. In terms of deep seas, there are 2 types. There's the sort of regular Rolex Deep Sea, and then there's the Deep Sea Challenge. Overall count is there are 3 base metal deep seas and there's 1 precious metal deep sea. In terms of the breakout, there are 2 base metal regular deep seas and 1 precious metal. And then the Deep Sea Challenge, there's only 1 version. It's in a base metal. It's the other titanium watch that Rolex has. Second to last professional line is the Air King. That's simple. There's only 1 base metal Air King. That's it. This is the only watch where you go in and there's no configuration tool. It just goes right to the Air King because there's only 1 version that's made. And then finally, there's the Explorer. Now, the Explorer is actually, I broke it into 3 categories. There's the basic Explorer, commonly called the Explorer 1, which is available in 36 millimeter and 40 millimeter. And then there's the Explorer 2. So overall, there are 4 base metal Explorers and there's 1 two-tone. And if you want to know how that's broken out, the 36 millimeter is 1 base metal and 1 two-tone. And then the 40 millimeter has 1 base metal configuration. And then the Explorer 2, because of the dial choices, has 2 base metal options available. So grand tally of these 106 watches is there are 23 in base metal, there are 17 in two-tone, and there are 66 in precious metal. Looking at it as a pie chart, you can see what those numbers already conveyed. It is overwhelming. The professional line, remember, this is the most sports line that Rolex has. Their other watches are considered classic versions. These were all purpose-built at some point to serve some sort of function. And almost two-thirds of them at this stage are in precious metals, which arguably is about being jewelry, not about actually performing a particular function. The base metals are actually next. About 1/4 of the little less of the total is available as some sort of mostly steel. There are a couple titanium watches in the list though. And then two-tone represents less than 1/5 of the overall selection, probably because it's a fairly polarizing look. They're relatively affordable, so it's a way to get a little bit of precious metal. And some people like that look, but it comes in and out of fashion quite a bit. So it always sort of stands there. So doing this analysis, like, are they just jewelry now? No, not overall. But is it predominantly jewelry? Absolutely. Just going off of precious metal, if we're saying precious metal is jewelry, not function-based, even if it still has the same water resistance, the chronographs still work and all the rest of it, that it's first and foremost trying to show off, then, I mean, with almost 2/3 of the selection, you can't really argue it. And I deliberately took the least dressy classification, the professional classification, to do the analysis. Now, how bad is it in terms of what's available for just doing a function built, like you really wanted to go diving, you're a serious diver and you want a serious dive watch? Kind of depends how you treat the two-tones in terms of, like, do you want to lump them in as more jewelry? Do you want to lump them in as more professional? By and large, these are predominantly still base metal watches. So if you want to kind of merge those together and you get it closer to the 30% level, you know, and you're going around saying, well, about 1/3 of them are still professional based. You know, that's an option. The other option is saying, nope, if you're getting gold or platinum on these sort of watches, I mean, the Yachtmaster with the platinum steel combos, it's like, if you wanted serious stuff, you go and get Submariners, not Yachtmasters for function purposes. In that regard, you could clump the two-tone versions with the precious metal, and then all of a sudden, we're 80% almost of jewelry. So yeah, 60 to 80% of the professional line is jewelry. It's probably the easiest, too long didn't read way to say it. Now, people sometimes like predictions. I'm terrible at them, but I'll give you some anyway. What do I think Rolex is going to do in the future? I think we're going to see not necessarily fewer watches in base metal, but I do think we're going to see more and more variation in precious metal, more jewelry as a percentage of the overall pie versus functional base metal watches. And that's because that's where the profit's at. So even with Rolex trying to produce more and more watches to satisfy demand, and what are they up to? Estimates, I think, are around 1.3 million a year. They can't just spool up a factory instantly to satisfy all of that. So if they want to make more money, they need to sell higher profit margin watches. And precious metal is absolutely, as all of us who have collected for a while know, the markups on precious metal, the profit margin on precious metal is significantly higher than on base metal watches. So that's really the route that I think they need to go. And I've heard another, actually probably more than one at this point, YouTuber talk about when you get in the precious metal space, you also kind of like to stand out. So especially with these watches, which are very blingy, they're not dress watches. We're taking things like a Submariner and putting it in gold. So in that regard, you're seeing more variety. Remember, I'm counting every iteration I could find where I got to choose, like, do I want it on Oyster Flex, or do I want it on a Jubilee, or do I want it on the traditional Oyster bracelet? Like, those are 3 different options, different dial configurations. The Daytona is a great category to go and explore on that, because there are just so many different dials that you can put into any given watch. But you start to notice there are more choices for dials in precious metal than there are in base metal. And that's something that I think we're going to just see more and more of. Rolex is going to give more variety in the precious metal, because while they still want to sell, say, a yellow gold version of a Daytona, people don't want it to all look the same. So how do you mix that up? Well, maybe they want a ceramic bezel. Maybe they want jewels in the bezel. Maybe they want the black dial. No, maybe they want mother of pearl, or whatever they decide to come out with as a company. That's why you're seeing all of that. It's not really a bunch of variety versus the cases. Yeah, there's some. There's like oyster steel versus yellow gold, white gold, platinum. Maybe you'll have your rose gold version with all the fancy Rolex names or whatever they choose to do. But so you have a little bit of variety from that, but a lot of it is actually the mix and match of the buffet that you get to do to sort of configure it to give yourself more personality. You go down to the base metals, a lot fewer choices, maybe a few dial colors, maybe a few bezel choices. The GMT Master 2 is really the only place where you get a lot of ability to mix and match how the watch might kind of look, because there are a few bezel insert options that sort of operate there. Submariner's got a little bit of that as well, but otherwise, most of the base metal variants, 1 or 2 dials, and the other changes are usually sizing. So I don't think that Rolex is going to get out of the steel game or anything. They clearly can get a lot of people first into the brand there. But I think we're just going to see the pie grow more and more precious and less base as they provide just more and more options at the precious metal level while keeping the number of options in the base metal about the same. I don't know what's going to happen with two-tone. My gut says it's going to go down as well, because I just don't think they're going to roll out a bunch more two-tone versus the amount they've already got. I think they're going to hold that steady as well, because again, the money's not really in two-tone, it's in precious. So I think Rolex is going to go more and more jewelry, at least in terms of choices, not necessarily diminishing the raw count of base metal versions available across their various professional lines, but you're going to see more and more variety on the precious metal side, just so more people feel compelled to get something, getting a Rolex, getting something from a brand that makes over 1 million watches a year, but still feeling somewhat unique. You don't want everyone buying your $60,000 watch to have the same exact watch, or they're going to feel like how everyone who buys stainless steel Submariners feel. And that's not the vibe that Rolex seems to be going for. But those are my thoughts. What do you think of this? What do you think of the analysis? Please leave comments below. If you found this interesting, please give it a like. It does help the channel. And if you want to know when I have a new video come out, just click the subscribe button and YouTube takes care of you on that automatically. Other than that, I hope you all have a really good day. Take care.